Yes,
Yes,
sir,
sir,
it is visible.
visible. Okay. Also, I mean, since we have around 15 participants, so if you have any question, answer, or anything, we can make it interactively. And please feel free to just use the chat window as well, and then we can discuss over the chat window throughout at any point of time. If you want any specific questions, queries, I have the chat window open, and then we can discuss through there as well. Um, the next 1 hour and 1.5 hour, what we will be talking about is primarily in Industry 4.0, how AI can be used, machine learning, deep learning, and I'll take through like a couple of examples in MATLAB of how we can address those topics, those questions. How can we actually use in the area of manufacturing, in the area of Industry 4.0, this sector of artificial intelligence, of machine learning, deep learning. So as you can understand, I mean, my background is mechanical, but then we did during my research, I was involved in a lot of statistics sort of approach to research. But then what happened is nowadays AI is not really something which is only for computer sciences, but it has been using in multiple sectors, and that includes manufacturing, mechanical, robotics, all those things as well. And because the reason is, of course, it is only dependent on data, and as long as we have data, we can uh, use this sort of modeling, and we'll talk about some sample cases on that area. Okay. Yeah, I'll share the slides also anyway, and this is my email ID. So at the end, if you want any specific questions on your research, on your courses, or anything, feel free to reach out to us, and we can definitely discuss with you separately. Okay, so now moving on to Industry 4.0. Industry 4.0, if we look into how it has advented over the years, it's not like something very new. There has been innovations for multiple years now. I mean, there has been multiple different forms of innovations that has happened throughout history. Now, speaking of which, when we saw Industry 1.0, right? So when basically the mechanization happened, anything which is in a mechanical way, steam power engine basically came up. Industry 2.0 came, the assembly lines. Like it's not like a single device that we have to create, but we can also have like a car manufacturing line or something like that. Industry 3 is primarily the automation, where computers come into the picture, electronics come into the picture, and then those things also get interlinked, right? So it's not like separately we are handling computers and separately we are handling machines. So they are getting interlinked. And finally, we are in this area of Industry 4.0, and people have started talking about Industry 5.0 as well. So booming job industry and for projects from industry. So all those things happen in this area where there are multiple of this smart manufacturing concepts. So industries talking with each other through IoT platform, or can we use data analytics to help us in any of the solving problems in any form of like manufacturing or it can be literally any form of industry, and we'll come to those very soon. Now moving ahead, um, if we have to look about AI as a tool, artificial intelligence, because that is kind of the, I mean, if we think about mathematics, right, mathematics is not like something only one particular department or industry talk about. um, I'm sorry, give me 1 minute. I just, there is a power lag. I'll just come join one more 1 minute or something. uh, okay, sorry about that. Yeah, I think I'm reconnected. So if we think about artificial intelligence as a tool, it's not like something I mean, it has come up from 1950s. It has been there from the 1950s. It's now it has been used in everyday life. How in different forms. If we look into our everyday world, we have in all our phones, we have the Google Assistant. We tell them like what is the temperature today. It tells us something, so it can understand what we are speaking. Similarly, if we have to think about face recognition, so if you think about Facebook or Instagram or things like that, they can recognize what is a face. They do auto tagging. So in general purpose, AI has been there. And it has come up in the last era, like 5 6 years, where it has really taken up the pace, and then it has found in different forms applications. If you think of Uber, Netflix, YouTube, Amazon, Google, all of them are using AI. But we now the thing is, it's not only limited to those sort of companies. It is also there in very core engineering, like manufacturing sort of examples as well. And that's where it come into the picture of how standard domain knowledge, how knowledges that we are using in classical, in specific, like mechanical, civils, production, those sort of stream people can also use this tool, just like mathematics. Mathematics is not limited to any particular discipline. Is being used by everybody, finance people, art. So everybody uses mathematics, and same for AI. So it's that sort of a skill. So these are all of them. The last example here is automated driving, which is essentially one of those applications as well, where we are finding in actual cars where people use AI. Now, where do we need AI? If we have to ask this question, does that mean that we have to do AI just because everybody is doing AI? Is that is the situation? That is not true. If we can give away with AI, it's of course we can live without AI as well. So let's think about problems, and then we can think about whether AI can actually help us in this problem, and then we can go for that sort of a solution. Artificial intelligence, AI is where I'm talking is artificial intelligence. And then we'll talk about, like, in the area of predictive maintenance or smart manufacturing, how artificial intelligence come into the picture. So maybe we can ask this as a question, if you can put in the chat window. Have anybody used or planning to use of machine learning, deep learning in your work, research, anything? If you can mention like a yes or no in the chat window, that would be useful. If you have you heard, if are you interested about these in your smart manufacturing workflow, something like predictive maintenance or machine learning, deep learning? But are you using this? Are you working on this? Are you planning to work on this? If you can just mention in the chat window, that will be useful. Hmm. Okay. Okay, so we have some yeses, so that definitely means you are exposed to, which is nice. So then let's ask the second question. If this is the operation that we are thinking about, right? So this robot is basically picking up this block and putting it in the.
Not audible, sir. Hello.
Hello, am I audible?
Yeah. No. No.
Sure, thanks. So if we look into this example, so this robot is picking up this block from the left conveyor belt and putting on the right conveyor belt. So what do you think? Is there AI involved in this operation? If you can if you can put inside the chat window. Yes, AI means artificial intelligence. That's what I'm referring to. And artificial intelligence typically compasses of three components, like machine learning, deep learning, and then application of that becomes something like predictive maintenance, right? So yeah, if you what do you think? Is there machine learning, deep learning, um, or reinforcement learning, or any form of learning, or rather AI in general, is involved in this operation that is there in the slide, this video? Yes, no, again, that will be interesting to know. Yes, okay. Anybody else? Any other thoughts? Okay, so if we look into this particular operation, what it is doing is just picking up and putting it on the right? It's one standard operation that it is doing. So this is like, there is no AI here. There is some part of programming, of course. So programming does not always mean AI. So that is the other part of it. It's there, of course we can program it. The program is, if you have a stopwatch and measure the time, it's doing in a particular time instance. So it's just doing maybe after 1 minute pick up this block, wait for a minute, and then again do this operation, again wait for a minute, again do this operation. So it's doing the same repetitive task, and it is programmed to do that task. But there is now no AI part into it, because it's not predictive predicting anything. It's just about we can. So these are like multiple linkages in robotics. We can model this, we can program that, and then let it do the same thing. Which is if you think about it, it's something like Industry 3. It's an autonomous stuff. So if I put a human there and the human wants to pick up and drop it, how about not doing that, but just making it automated? So automated does not always mean that AI. AI needs some other parts to it, and that's what we come into. So this is something like us: one machine, one job, repetitive task, programmed to do it, just do it. That's it. But there is no AI part to it. But if you think about something like a factory floor, where there are so many of these robots, and then what do we want to do? We want to make sure that if there is something wrong, the operator also get notified that there is something wrong. Then what we need to know what exactly we mean by something wrong. The machine also has to need to know what exactly it is meant by something wrong. Uh, so in those sort of a scale up procedure where we have to operate so many of these machines, and we need to know beforehand which one is performing correctly, which one is probably not performing correctly. So in all those cases, what we can do is we can think about making this include the component of AI. Now, how can that be done? Now, what exactly is AI? Um, if you look into a classical definition, it means artificial intelligence is the capability of a machine to imitate intelligent human behavior. Right now, the interesting thing is over the years we have not imitated, but it can match or exceed. So it can outperform human. The reason being, let's come to the reason why. So if you look into the important part of this is by training a machine. So it's not like some kind of a sci-fi movie that it can do automatically. It has to be trained. So training means it has to be a data set by which an algorithm can be trained. So if you look into our memory, we also get trained from childhood or multiple different things, but then we always also forget things. We probably do not remember every particular instance from our childhood. But then a machine, if we train them with the relevant data, not everything, then the machine gets trained on that data. Right, so that's essentially the crux of it, where the training part of the puzzle is there. We needed to train a machine with a data point so that it finds out patterns inside that data, and then the objective is based on that it can predict something. Um, Now, if we look into the programming part of it, because it was an interesting thought that came up of the programming concept. Now, when we think of traditional programming, I mentioned programming does not necessarily mean AI. AI can have programming. AI does have programming, but programming does not mean there is AI. Right, so that's one of the things to note. Now, once we think about a traditional programming, what we have is, say, for example, we have a computer, and inside the computer we put in data. Now the data can be, say, if I think about an equation that I want to solve, maybe some Newton's law. So force equals to mass times acceleration. That is a program. That is an equation that I want to solve. Now, if you want to solve, if I tell the computer that, I mean, this is really straightforward, but say, for example, if I want to solve this as a second order differential equation, because force is equal to mass times acceleration, and acceleration is nothing but d2x dt square, right? So it's a second order derivative of position. So from there, if I want to solve for position, that means I want to solve this second order differential equation for position. So if I have to do that, what do we need? We need the values of maybe force and mass. We need the initial conditions. So we give in those data. We can solve by hand, or we can give it to a computer, and we solve this, and then we find out how the position changes with time. So that is what traditional programming is all about. Now, that does not mean it can only be second order derivative equations. It can be any form of a program that we know of, where we know the equation, where we know what we are looking to solve for. So we give in the data, the input conditions, and we tell the program, and then the computer solves for the output, or we manually solve for the output. So that is what traditional programming is. Now, the thing I talked about the equation is there can be multiple equations which we cannot solve by hand, right? So which we cannot solve analytically. For those cases, what we do is we go for numerical computations. So whatever be the situation, we go for a computer and then solve it. We can solve it in different forms, and then we get the output. But then, say, for example, if we shift these two, right, so where we do not have the program, but we have the output. We have a typical output, and from there we want to find out the program, and then we want to use this program for future purposes. Maybe say, for example, if the temperature now, right? So if I have the data of temperature and the factors that affect temperature, maybe like how much sun radiation, how much wind velocity, humidity, all those parameters I record for the last 10 years. And then we see the temperature for the last 10 years. And based on that, we can create a program by which now we can predict the temperature for future. So if that sort of a thing we do, where we do not have, we don't have an equation which gives us a temperature for tomorrow. We do not have an equation which can predict um, this is a face, or this is a face of a human, or this is a face of an animal, or those sort of things, like what we showed in the Facebook example, or those sort of categories where we do not have an equation to do that. But what we can do is, if I train a model with different sorts of faces of human and with faces of other animals, then maybe that we can create a model, which we can create a program, or in artificial intelligence terminology we call it a model. Then what we can do is, we can ask this model that if I give a random image to it, it can tell whether that is a face or not, right? So that is the basic difference between normal programming and AI, where AI we always include the training and predicting purposes, but whereas programming can be, if I have to solve an equation numerically, or if you have to do an optimization problem, all those things can be programming. But then when we do this for without a physical equation, but using the output to create the program, that is where machine learning or deep learning come into the picture. Okay, now within this bucket of artificial intelligence, there is something called machine learning, and there is something called deep learning. All these things are there in different forms. Now, if once we're talking about this machine learning, and let's look at the differences as well. In general, machine learning means that, say for example, if I have a cup in my hand now, and if I have a model that will identify whether this is a cup or not, then how do we do that? How do we as human identify that this is a cup versus this is a mouse versus this is a keyboard? How do we do that? We know the certain characteristics which makes it a cup, right? It's we do it by intuitively, but essentially the eyes recognize certain characteristics inside those images, from which we can find out that, okay, this is called a cup, and this is a mouse, and so on and so forth. So those are called features. So if given a data set, the data set can be images, can be any data. If you have a sensor, like if you have a smartphone, every smartphone is a sensor. Every our smartphone can record acceleration. So every of the smartphone contains an accelerometer inside it. What you can do is, you can record that. We have something called MATLAB Mobile, where using MATLAB Mobile you can tap all the sensors in the smartphone. So if you are running around, you can get your acceleration. So you can create a Fitbit out of your smartphone using MATLAB as to create the program. So those sort of things. So everybody has sensors. So all those sensors basically lead to data. So once we have that data can be images if you use from camera. It can be time series data, signals, text, whatever be the data. Now, once we have that data, if we try to find out those features, it's called machine learning. We as human, so if I have to find out the cylindricity of this cup, or if I have to find out how does the structure looks like, the shape looks like, all those sort of patterns and things. So if we do that, that is called machine learning. In deep learning, this is done through the form of some neural network. Okay. The neural networks can be multiple different things. For images, for signals, there can be different forms of neural networks, and we'll come to those in a bit. But that is kind of the basic difference between machine learning and deep learning. um, Now, the reason AI has been there from 1950s. Okay, it's just that today we have access to a lot of data. Today it is not like I have to be a computer scientist to use AI can be a skill which I can use just like that for our application. So it's more of a user friendly tool now for any kinds of applications. Now, the reason that has also impacted the economy and also impacted multiple different things, like the national education policies, all those things have now talking about AI as well. Now, in terms of the job opportunities, like people graduating, there are loads of jobs on this as well. But we have to remember that if we talk about AI, we cannot forget the domain knowledge, because we have to use AI for some problem, and the problem comes from the specific domain, which can be mechanical, civil, electrical, whatever be the domain. So we cannot just forget the domain and then concentrate on data as well. So there are a lot of I mean it's impacting the economy very significantly, as we all know, and there are projections that it will just go on increasing over the next decade and so on. Okay. The important thing is, once it is doing, one of the top three challenges which has been cited by multiple statistics is the skills, uh, because the skills has also got to, because that's one of the challenges. You can see here 56% of the challenge is being contributed by the skills. So this is important, we have to address that. How do we actually use it? So what we do in MathWorks is, also we have been named as a leader, if you see in this quadrant. So Gartner is one of those companies who come out with the different players who work on this domain. So you can see IBM MathWorks is listed as one of the leaders, because we are doing a multiple things which are impacting the engineering ecosystem and science ecosystem, the application world, which can be automated driving, predictive maintenance, and all those sort of things, biomedical applications, healthcare applications, and so on and so forth. It's there also in the Asia Pacific region. So it's the Asia Pacific region is one of the highest ranked choice for deep learning and data science applications. Why? Because it has been used for all these applications. So we have like multiple industry customers with whom we are working on these applications. It can be aerospace defense. So if we think about Indian defense, and also multiple other companies, defense sectors, and also aerospace, so Airbus, Boeing, all those companies are using a lot of MathWorks in terms of clubbing the domain knowledge plus AI. So it's not only AI, so AI plus something. Plus can be aerospace, automotive, COVID-19 related research in biological sciences, communications, and so on and so forth. Also, you can go to Google and then look it up. I'm not sure talking about the details here. Now, more specifically, if we think about an Indian context, so we are looking to this NASSCOM report that came up as part of Niti Aayog's. These are the sectors which has been highlighted. So there are lots of research going on. These are some of the very hot topics in research now. So AI, again, AI plus something, and the plus has been contributed in terms of PM's vision to agriculture, energy, MSMEs, healthcare. So smart manufacturing can go specifically in the MSME sector as well. And then there is healthcare, financial service, logistics, and all so on and so forth. We will share the slides. What we have here is these are all links in this specific domain. So if you look into the NASSCOM remote, the 6 domains they talk about. So what we have here is specific our applications, what we have worked on, use cases and things like that for all those domains. So you can look into those. Again, the application can be on all these domains. So this can give you insights on what can be done, what people are looking for, what industries are doing, what academics are doing, and all those things. So these are all links which you can go through later on. Okay, now let's come back to how do we actually do. This is kind of more an overview of the holistic approach. So we'll talk about more domain specific and take up examples. By the way, any questions so far before we talk about this? If you have any questions, any thoughts, anything you want to see for the next 1 hour, I can change accordingly as well. So if you have any thoughts, if you have any questions, feel free to just post in the chat window. Okay. So now let's look into how do we actually approach these things. So maybe something like detection, like how do we actually find out object detection. So this is where a typical example, what is being doing here is we're showing a camera to somebody and it is identifying a mask. We're very relevant in the current situation. And so there are multiple companies who are creating drones, integrating aerospace robotics with this, so that what it can do is it can find out whether person is wearing mask or not. And that sort of things are I mean, not difficult to create, so to say. Now let's see how can, I mean, I'll take a simple example and then we go for a manufacturing example, because a manufacturing example needs a little more of data sets and things. So we'll go to that. But before that, I'll just explain the concept using a very simple example. So I'll go over to MATLAB now. So this is the platform of MATLAB. Anybody has used MATLAB here? If you can put yes or no, that will be also useful for any kind of application. No. Okay. Okay. So MATLAB is this simulation platform. So Dr. Singh has used, so where we can do any kinds of, okay, Simulink. Yeah, I mean, if you have used Simulink also, that also. So MATLAB and Simulink are the platform. So MATLAB is the base language. Simulink is a block diagram based approach, which we can do for controls for different kinds of, like we talked about aerospace, automobile. So we can use blocks for specific modelings. I mean, typically what it looks like is this is the command window. So if I write here a equal to say 2 and then b equal to say 3, I mean, sorry, b equals to 3, and then say, for example, c equals to a plus b. So I mean, things like that. Then I mean, there can be a lot of different things. I'm just showing how this platform looks like, and we see the variables comes up here. Similarly, what we can do is we can create maybe a vector. So say, for example, if I say something like this, then what happens is it creates a 2 by 2 vector. And then I mean, you can do a lot of things with these vectors. You can find out eigenvalues, eigenvectors, you can do matrix multiplications, and so on and so forth. If I have to say plot something, I can say something like g equal to 0, 0.1 to 10. If I say this, what it does is basically creates a vector, which is, oops, yeah, so we have to make it 0.1. So then what happens is, it starts from 0, increment of 0.1, and then it ends at 10. So 0, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, like this, it goes on to 10. Now, similarly, if I say y equal to sine t, so then what happens is it creates a sine function. So after that, I can say plot t comma y. Then what it will do is it will do my plot of sine curve. And so like this, you can keep on going. We can do solution of equations. We can do optimization problems, anything literally. Now let's see about how we can do this thing about uh, identifying objects and things like that. So like the way we can detect variables, what we can do is we can also use yeah, I mean, there are multiple networks which are trained. We talked about networks. So say, for example, I'm just reading an image now. So imread is the command for reading an image. Whatever image you have saved in your computer, you can just read using this command called imread. So, and that image can be anything. It can be a JPEG image, it can be a TIFF image, it can be a PNG image, whatever the file format. So what I'm doing here is just reading this image. Sorry, it's peacock dot, not comma. So peacock.jpg, right? So we have read this image. How does this image look like? I say im show I, and this is how the image looks like. This is a standard. I'm just taking a random image that I have in my system. I mean, this image, you also have one. If anybody downloads MATLAB, they will get this image anyway. It's kind of an example image which is there. So now I have this image. Now, can I create an algorithm which, if I give this image, it will tell me that this is a peacock? The same thing that can be used for mass or manufacturing example, which we'll come across as well. So can we do that? So the important thing to note here is we have to train a network. Now, network means it's a neural network which contains multiple different layers in which we identify features. I mean, there are a bunch of linear algebra that happens inside those networks. You can think it to be a box which contains all those different layers. Now, how does that look like? I'm just using a network now. So AlexNet is one such network. So AlexNet has been created. It's a long time back. It's not very recent. There has been very more recent advanced networks as well. So I'm using AlexNet, which is fairly easy, but it came up some time back as well. It was created by somebody called Alex. So these networks are created by people all around the globe, and they put it out in the open world, and then everybody can read it. So here we can, like the way we were doing A equal to 2, I'm just using net equal to AlexNet. right? So once I do net equals to AlexNet, what happens is AlexNet also gets imported inside MATLAB. So if you see here net, so I is this image, right? So if you look into this workspace, I is this image which contains, this is the size of the image, right? So it contains 792, 1056 cross 3. What that mean is 792 number of rows in that image, 192 or 1056 number of columns in that image, and 3 means RGB. So any color image basically means it's a red image, green image, and blue image superposition. So that is our peacock image. This is the image we looked into, this eye. Just to make sure we remember, this is, if I say im show means image, show means seeing. So I read the image using imread and seeing the image using im show. This is the image. It's a peacock colored image, so that's why 3, and number of rows and number of columns is the 792 and 1056. So this is the image we have, and this is the network that I just imported. Now what is this in network? So if I go inside, I'm just double clicking this. Now you see here, this network contains these 3. This is a structure in programming language which contains different fields. Now this contains layers. So if I go inside layers, these are the layers. So there is an input layer, there is a convolution layer. So whenever we deal with images, we deal with something called convolution operation. Convolution basically finds out patterns inside images. Then there is ReLU layer, which is a linear algebra operation, normalization, max pooling, so on and so forth. So ultimately it goes for 25 layers. So there are like 20, if you can think about to be like 25, 25 layers. So 25, so it's a big network which contains all these different layers. Now, how do we actually visualize these layers inside MATLAB? So if I go inside MATLAB, there are multiple ways to visualize things which are called apps. So if you look here, there is something called curve fitting, optimization, PIDs for controls, and so on and so forth. There are so many of these apps. Apps are basically graphical user interfaces, which basically means we can do things without coding, and then the codes will be automatically generated. So if I go down, there's something called Deep Network Designer. So if I start into Deep Network Designer, Deep Network Designer is one such app where we can create our networks without writing codes. We can kind of drag and drop and things like that. So like that we can see. So the network that we just imported, which we didn't create, it was there. I just called it. So you can always call it once you have MATLAB, because then we do not have to create this, because these are already created and trained. So I'm just going here and starting a blank network, right? Create new blank network. So here I can say new from workspace. Net is already there. That is our network. It's a series network with 25 layers. I'm clicking OK. So the network will come over here now. So this is our network, right? So if I now kind of zoom in here, you will see all the layers. So the layers, the first layer is an image input layer. You can see that this is image input layer. It can take up images of the size of 227, 227. Then we have the convolution, and these are some of the parameters which are important for a convolution operation. Learning factor, bias, and all those things. ReLU, normalization. So these are all the layers. So we see visually what the layer means. And similarly, if you want to create a network, you can just drag and drop these things. If you want to edit this network, I can basically delete this, drag from here our new network. So we need to know what those things are, but then that's how we create our networks. But a good starting point is when we use already trained networks. So this network is already trained, so I can just use like this one as it is. Okay, so this is what it is. Now the thing is, you might wonder, like, can I use this network to identify anything? Like if you give any random image, will it be able to identify that image? First of all, let's see whether it can identify peacock or not. Um, so now let's see if I have to identify this thing. So I have the network, right? Inside MATLAB, I have the network, and I have the image. Now for identifying, we use a command called classify. So classify net comma I. So net is our network and I means our image, the peacock image. So if I just use this, let's see now what it does. It says that this is an error. Now what is the error? The error is, it tells me that the input size have to have a size of 227, 227. Now remember the first layer, this is the first layer. and it tells me that the input size is 227, 227, 3. That means that image needs to have 227 number of rows, 227 number of columns, and 3 channels representing red, green, and blue. But how does our image look like? Our image has 792 rows and 1056 columns. So it's like a huge image of size. It's like a poster image. And then our network can identify only images which is of a size of a printing paper, like 227, 227. I'm just giving an analogy. If you think about it as an analogy, the input size is either 227, 227 is what it can accept. But if I give like a huge image to that network, it cannot identify. So then what do we need to do? We need to resize this image. Not cropping, but resizing. Cropping means we are omitting portions, but resizing means we are just making it small. So how can we do that? So I'm just getting the home and here. So for doing this, what we can do is we can use this command called imresize. So that's why the identification of domain knowledge, image processing is coming into the picture as well. Again, in MATLAB, since we have strength in the domain specific areas, we can use those commands very easily. So imresize means image resize. What is our original image? This one. And which size I want to make it? 227, 227, right? So then I'm resizing this image to a 227 cross 227. Now, if you look here, I has changed into 227 cross 227. And it's not like that huge image anymore. So once we have that, now if I say classify net comma I, net is our network and I is that image. Now it has been able to identify peacock. So if I give this random peacock image to this network will tell me that this is a peacock image. Now that brings us to that question, can it identify anything? So for example, that mask question, can I give a mask to this image and then it will identify mask? No, it can only identify classes. Classes means this peacock or all those things. It can only identify classes with which it is trained, right? So if it is not trained with something, then it won't be able to identify that. Now, what are the classes then? Then also we need to know which are the classes. So to know the classes, we go to the final classification output layer. And inside classes, we see that this is the classes. The classes here says 1000 categories. So that means it is trained with 1000 classes. So if I go into classes, we see these are the classes. There are 1000 of this. This is tench, goldfish, so different sorts of animals basically. So these are all the classes that is there inside AlexNet. So AlexNet can only find out identify images which falls inside these classes. It won't be able to do some random image. So if I have to do a random image, what can I do? That's what we will come into the picture as well. But before that, these are the classes. Now, if I have to look into the classes, there are multiple ways you can just look from here. Also, if I want to, you can create a word cloud of it. Word cloud, if you remember, let's create a word cloud of it. So in MATLAB, we have an inbuilt command called word cloud. So I say word cloud. Then net. So net. So if I have to find out the classes, what I can do is classes net dot layers end. So that means net dot layers is basically, so if you remember, let me just show you net again. So this is some of the, so if I go inside net, right, this is net. Now this is net layers. So when I say net dot layers, that means it goes inside these layers, right? So inside net dot layers, if I say net dot layers 1, let me just show you net dot layers 1. So if I say net dot layers, and remember MATLAB is case sensitive, so I have to be careful on that. So if I say net dot layers 1, then it tells me this is the first layer. Remember, image input layer, and these are the fields there. So if I say net dot layers 2, it will give me this second layer, which is the convolution layer. See this convolution 2D layer, and so on and so forth. So if I go to the final layer, so if I say end, that means it will take the final layer. So the final layer, this gives me the classification output layer. So now if I have to find out the classes, maybe I can say this. If I just say home, what I can do is the classes. What are the classes? Net dot layers and then end. That means I'm taking the final layer, and inside the final layer I am going for the classes field. So if you look into the layers, the final layer is this. Dot classes means it will go inside the classes. So that's what we want to see. So I'm just taking all the classes in this classes named variable, right? So once we go inside that classes named variable, I can also do a word cloud. So I say word cloud classes. Then let's see what comes up.
Okay. Okay. Chill, dude, chill. Yeah. Chill.
Any questions? Okay, so if I say word cloud dot classes, we see it forms this form of a word cloud. We might have seen this word cloud things in different areas, right? These are there in many of the graphics and posters and things. So these are all the classes. Tench is the first one, remember, and then we have all these different classes. So all the classes come up here. So these are the classes with which AlexNet is trained, right? And that's why AlexNet can identify, AlexNet means this network can identify any object which falls within those classes, right? So that's how we can. So this is, I mean, if you remember, what are the lines we wrote in programming for 2.5? This is a deep learning object recognition problem. So if I just want to clear all, means it clears up this workspace. So how many lines and what are the things what we did? We basically just wrote like 3-4 lines of code and just summarize all the lines here once it clears up. So clear all basically means it gets rid of the memory. So what we can do is, first of all, I read the image, right? So imrid peacock. So I'm just doing it real time as well. Peacock.jpg. So this is the peacock image. So once we get this peacock image, what I need to do, I got AlexNet. So how we did AlexNet? So AlexNet, net equals to AlexNet. The third step, what I had to do is I had to resize this image. How can I resize this image? I say, oops, sorry. Yeah, sorry about that. Let me just do it once more. So imrid, I can use this button. So imrid dot, so I get the image and then I get net equals to AlexNet. And after that, what we can do is we can resize this image. So is resizing this image is basically 227 to 27, right? This. And after we are done with this, the next step is just basically classify net comma I, right? And then that's about it. So it's like 4 lines of code. So this is the programming we are doing for any finding out object recognition. So how do we identify objects? And this is about it. If we have a pre-trained network, we just get the network and let it find out what we are doing. But the question, of course, comes, which we'll come to now, is if this class, which the class we want to find out, is not there. So I'll come to that, like how do we address that? The next example will cater to that. But before that, any questions on this example? So this is deep learning for images, for signals. This is what we do for artificial intelligence for any kinds of images, right? So I'm taking a simple example to identify stuff, classifying stuff. Any questions on to this point?
Sir, you said that in the MATLAB all the operation can be done by using these apps. So why we need this programming part?
No, it's the apps are for specific tasks. It's not just apps. So for example, if I have to create my own network, that we can do in apps. But if you have to use the classification, then we have to use this command called classify. So originally it started as a programming language. So there are multiple of these programming steps. So you don't think about it as only apps. Apps are there to make things easier for us. But if you look into the programming, this is just like 4 lines, right? Uh, those 4 lines are easier to do than maybe doing through the apps. So apps are for specific tasks. It's not only apps. So if you look into the apps region, so we have curve fitting, optimization, distribution fitter, driving scenarios, and then we can do classification. Deep network design is for, but we need to know the concept. It's not like it's a black box. It's not like we give something, it will give you something. So that's doesn't happen here. We need to understand the concept and then implement that here. We need to also physically, we can see, I mean, there's nothing can go wrong because it's the software. Hardware is, if we are doing on hardware, maybe there are multiple things which we cannot do through experiments. We can do those experiments in the software. Nothing can go wrong apart from maybe something is not working in a simulation, and then we can reboot the system. But in a simulation, the advantage is in a software environment, we can try out things. So once we learn something, we can try out things here and then see how it looks like. Okay.
Okay, okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Sure. Any other questions up to this point?
So I think this part, programming part, is a little difficult for first learner. So
Mhm.
you please introduce about all the thing and what about the machine learning, all this predictive maintenance and fault analysis. That will be better for the audience, as I think.
Okay. Yeah, talk about courses as well at the end, free courses, the courses for everybody. It will be good if you can do those courses and then we can discuss separately as well. Um, because since this is also 1.5 hour, this is not like a starting from scratch sort of a workshop
Yeah,
seminar, but
yeah,
we'll show how it looks like at the finally when we come to something. Okay.
yeah. Okay.
Now the same thing what we can do is we can also put it now what we did here, it's like 3-4 lines what we did here. If we have to do that, we can put it using a camera as well and then find out like what we is doing here. It is finding out for mouse and then laptops. You can see that this thing is start coming up, right? So that's what it can do. It can find out specific stuff. It can find out objects and things. And to do that, what basically we need to do is this few lines of code. The what we did in the last time example is we just did the resizing part. We did this part, but here what we are doing is we are using the webcam as well, or you can use any other camera or anything. So that's the only difference. So these things are not, I mean, it needs a little bit of practice and getting started with. It doesn't, it's not like very difficult or sort of that thing. I mean, 3-4 lines. I mean, nowadays, I mean, class 6-7 students are also doing it. We are doing this for class 6-7 students as well. They're starting up with AI from class 6-7 of these sort of things. So these are skills which is mandatory, and this is coming up for every sort of application. So people have made this mandatory in schools as well. Undergraduate, of course, that's always there. So that's I mean, the programming to say is it's not like the coding part. It's not like something that I mean only for computer scientists. Is nowadays some form of simulation modeling that is needed for any form of engineering or science. It's not restricted to only one specific discipline. So that's also crucial. Okay. Now moving ahead, if you look into manufacturing example, so can we take this example like what we did to a classic manufacturing example? Now the example what I'm going to talk about is, say for example, if I have multiple nuts coming out from a manufacturing belt, a conveyor belt, and then we have a camera there. This camera will take up some random nut images, and that image through an app, it will tell whether that nut is faulty or okay. Can we do that? So is this a classification task? Classification means is a categorical classifiers. So like this one. So if I give a random image of a nut to some algorithm, can it find out whether the nut is good or faulty? So this is typically of a defect detection problem. We can use different sorts of deep learning approach to do this problem. Uh, Now, this is the problem. Now, how do we deal with this problem? I'll show this example now. I'll go over to MATLAB again. So this is the problem we want to deal with. Now this is a MATLAB live script. If you want, we can share these files as well. So what we have is this hex nut defect classification problem. Like we use AlexNet. AlexNet, as you can see, the classes are very much in that those animals, and it's not a very strong network. So if you remember, this is what AlexNet is, a series network. So I'll just clear everything. because of this next example we are going to do. So now what we are doing is we are using this network called mobile net. Also, how do you get these networks in MATLAB? If you go home in add-ons, if I click on get add-ons, here you can give any search for any network and that network will come up. So say for example AlexNet. So if I say AlexNet, you can see that there is if I go down, there is deep learning toolbox for AlexNet network. You'll just look for the staff thing because then you know this is the correct one essentially. So this is AlexNet. For me, this is already installed. For the nuts, what we are using is something called a mobile net, right? So if I go for mobile net, similarly, there is deep learning toolbox for mobile net version 2 network. So this is also installed. So if you initially when you get MATLAB, these are not installed. So you have to install this, but these are all there. You can just search for it and install this. It's not installed because to save memory essentially. So this is what Alex mobile net v2 is what we are using. Also this syntax, this is called an MLX file. This is live script. In MATLAB live script, what happens is we have this text. So you can think about it to be a Microsoft Word document with MATLAB coding. So you can shuffle between text to MATLAB codes. You can put in links, hyperlinks, images, and like that. Now what we are doing here is we are using this network. We have 200 images. Now, of course, we have to train this network with both good NUT images and bad NUT images. So we need to have beforehand, like till yesterday, maybe I have recorded 100 images of good NUTs, 100 images of faulty NUTs till yesterday. Now I create our network. So tomorrow, if I give a random image of a NUT, this model can tell me whether this is a faulty NUT or a healthy NUT, right? So the concept is we need to do that training beforehand. We need to have the beforehand images so that we can create this model which will be useful for the future. So this is the concept behind. So what we are trying to do is we have this 200 images equally balanced between good and bad in the data set. And then what we need to do is once we have that data set, so if I have to talk about this step by step, what are the procedure? The first step is once we have the data set. So say for example, I have 100 good images and 100 bad images, right? So this is the total 200 images which we have. So what do we do with the data set? We separate it for training, validation, and testing, right? So what we are doing is we are keeping 60% for training, 20% for validation, and 20% for testing. What does that mean? That means we are using, so in total we have 200 images, right? 200 images, 100 are good, 100 are bad, as in bad NUTs. So out of that 60%, so 60% of that images we are using for training. Training means we will train that images. Now 20% for validation and 20% for testing. Now what is the difference between validation and testing? This is typically, say for example, when we are giving exams to students, what we can do is we can we can train them with certain examples, and then we give them some homework problems. Validation is typically that homework problem or quizzes, and testing is what comes up at the final test. Which it means is so out of the 60% of the training we are using for training, then some of the images which we are also using for training, we are doing for validation. Like I'm giving a random image and finding out the accuracy of that. And the testing images, the testing set of images have not seen the network ever, right? So like 20% of that 200 images, those 20% are testing. That means they have not seen ever the network. So once we are satisfied with the accuracy, we will see with those testing images how my network is performing. So once we have the data set, that is one thing what we need to do. We have to find out can the accuracy. So for that, what we do is we separate the data set for training, validating, and testing. Now how we do that? This is not MATLAB codes or stuff. This is just for writing. This is like title and things. So this is our links. Now how do we do that? So I'm just running this section by section here. Section by section means it's doesn't run the entire thing, so I can just split it into section. Now remember, for deep learning we need a lot of data. A lot of data means, I mean, here we are getting away with 200, but actually for examples, we need to have lots and lots of data. Whenever we are going for any deep learning sort of an approach or predictive maintenance, we need a lot of data. Now, how do we deal with so much of data? Because often it might happen that it's going for out of memory error or those sort of errors. So how can we deal with that sort of a huge number of images without going for an out of memory error or something that cannot deal with the memory allocation of the computer? So what we do here is we use something called a data store. So data store is a concept by which we deal with a lot of data in a memory efficient way. Memory efficient means it does things, I mean, I'm not going to the details, but it does things inside which makes it more memory efficient. So what we have here, if I go to my folder, I'll just show you what I have as the data, and then you can understand how we have separated the data. um, okay. Yeah, I'm just going for the data set here. Deep learning. Okay, so inside my folder, what I have inside this is the data folder. Now inside the data folder, I have hex nuts, and inside hex nuts, what we see here is we have bad and good, right? So bad set of nuts and then good set of nuts. So they are classified in this folder. Now, if I have to see this from the MATLAB window, we are just using this thing called image data store. Image data store is a command. It's just like one line of a command, one word of a command, by which it uses this memory efficient way to store the data. And from here, we are just seeing this 200 images. So there are 200 of these images now. So we get this 200 images. After that, what we need to do, I'm just reading all those images, and then the command here we are using is called split each label. That means we are just separating the data into training data, testing data, and validation data. So by using this command, and then the outputs goes for train, test, and valid. So the entire folder gets internally gets divided into these three subfolders, right? And those three subfolders contains randomly distributed data for training, testing, and validation with 60%, 20%, and 20%. And that we are doing using this command called split each label. And we can just run this section from just by clicking on this area. So after we are done with this training, the splitting, we are using something called a transform. Now, what is transform? If you remember in AlexNet, what we had is that AlexNet only accepts 227 cross 227 images, right? So 227 number of rows and 227 number of columns. Now, what does this network do? So let's see the network we have now. The network let me import the network. I don't know whether we have imported the network yet. Um, yeah, we haven't imported the network yet, but what the way this network, yeah, this network MobileNet v2, this needs images of 224 cross 224. So after splitting the data with 60% for training, 20% for validation, and 20% for testing, what we are doing is we are in this section, this 4 lines, what we are doing is we are making all the images. So this now it is not about one image, it is about all the 200 images. So for all of them, we are transforming them. So using this command called augmented image source, we are transforming them to 224 cos 224. And then there are some other things, like for example, if I want to rotate, because we have 200 images, right? 200 might not be enough. Then what we can do is we can rotate the images by 45 degree and generate 200 more images. So now we have like 400 images. So by this, we can generate more data set. That's what we are doing here. We can using something called image data augmenter, by which we are rotating the image 180 degrees and we are generating more images. And like this, we are just getting more images and for making our network better. One classic thing is that the more you have data set, the accuracy will be higher. So just to increase the data set, we are using this part. So once we are done with this part, we are getting the network part. So in this section, we are importing the network like we did for AlexNet. Here we are using something called MobileNet v2. Now, how does this network look like? If I go here, now you can see this net has come up. I can again go to my deep network designer and see how this network looks like. So now for this particular task, we can use the Network Designer app. So we go to this NIP Network Designer app. Once this opens up, from workspace, I'll click on import, and then maybe I'll take the net one. So net is our DAG network. So once we go for deep learning approaches, again, remember that we have to deal with all these networks. So now in this network, once this network is imported, so this is a more complicated network as compared to the previous one. The previous one just contained 25 layers. This one is a significantly complicated network, right? You can see that this contains um, so many layers, and the layers are also kind of intertwined and things like that. I even don't know the details of all this network, just that this network works best for this as mentioned by publications. So once we go for that network, once we import that network, the thing that we need to do is we need to edit this network a little bit so that now it works for nuts. So that's what we do here. This part we can do via apps as well. So we replace one layer. That's what we are doing. We are just replacing some layers. And then the end minus two means the network last but one, the last network, the last layer. So these are the things which we can do via apps as well. So this part. So like this, we get the network, we change some of the layers. The changing the layer comes to the context of which class we want to identify, right? So now it's the nuts. So there are two classes, faulty nuts or healthy nuts. So that's why we replace some of the final layers. So once we do that, this comes the training part. Now training takes a lot of time. So that's why it is important that we have a parallel, we do it parallelly, we do it either in a cloud, cluster, things like that. I won't do the training now because this will take a lot of time. So I'll just comment out this thing. If you have GPU, it makes things faster. GPU means it uses multiple cores and it makes training faster. So I'll just go for this commenting this part because we do not need that training now because it will take a lot of time. But the command to do that is training options. So this is how we do training. We use a command called training options. These are the algorithms. These are some of the things called hyperparameters, which improves accuracy and things like that. So we give these parameters and you can use the by default as well. So once we do training options, it will do our training part. So I can click this part, but we are not doing the training, so to say. So I'm just commenting this. I already trained this just before this session. So I'm just loading this. This is my trained network. So I'm just loading this now. Which I did. It takes some 30-45 minutes in my computer, but if you're doing in GPU, it will take 2-3 minutes. So once we have that network, this is the bad image and this is the good image. So once we do the training part, this is what we need to do. We are done here. So this is the training part. After we are done with the training part, I'm just loading the another file where we are seeing how it performs. So we just load the pre-trained network, right? So this is what we did in this last file of training the network. And finally, this is the network looks like. And then finally, if I have to see the visualization part, this is how it looks like. So for a good image, now the important part is what is the distinguishing part for any of these nuts that makes it good or that makes it bad. So once we do this activation map here, this color coding part, this signifies that these are the areas which are making it good. And this is the areas which are differentiating it between good and bad. And then what it can do is that it is basically identifying that this is a good image, this is a bad image. So once we are done with the training part, the network is created. So now I'm giving the testing image and this is classifying this as good and this is classifying as bad. And then the color code here basically distinguishes how are we doing that, which part of the image is what it is making it good and what it is making is bad. So these red means these are the areas which are different between good and bad, which we have found difference between good and bad. And this is how we are doing it. So the approach, this thing is called transfer learning. Transfer learning means we use a already trained network like what we are doing for this mobile net v2, and then we are changing some of the layers. And once we change some of the layers, it becomes the network gets equipped to handle our sort of problems, which is nuts here. So that is how we can do for these sort of images. If I have to use a deep learning approach to identify whether this is a faulty nut or a healthy nut. Now, if you look into a little more carefully, like say, for example, if there is a defective nut, so among these 3-4 images, we can easily find out which is a defective nut. We see it here. Now, if I do it via the machine learning, deep learning, we will see red here. That means this is the zone that is actually making it faulty. But for 4 nuts, we can do it visually. We do not need deep learning. If I have this many number of nuts, this contains what? 5 into 3, 15 number of nuts. This also I can find out visually. So this is one defective nut here. But say, for example, if you have this, because in a manufacturing floor, we are not limited like 15, 20, we are having so many, like this many. How can we do that? So if I have a network, it will do all these things, and it will do this in seconds, right? So it will go through all these images in seconds and find out which one is a defective nut. If I use the network, just what I created right now. So this is the advantage by what we can use as deep learning approach to do this, right? So we can find out the goods and defective nuts. Now, if we kind of find out the entire workflow, we always talk about this workflow. Workflow means what are the steps involved. The steps involved is data preparation. So where we find out the visualization, like look into the data, how do I actually handle this big data? So that sort of things, data preparation. Then comes the AI modeling, creating that network. Now that network can involve these neural networks which we talked about now, or it can involve feature extraction, like if we find out the features from any data, and then find out a classification. Like if we go for a machine learning approach, then we have to go for something called classification or regression. Then we go for those modelings. So from those, we find out the models, which model is relevant. And finally, we deploy it. We deploy it on a hardware. We can deploy it on any specific hardware, or we can deploy it on a cloud. We can create an app out of it. We can create your own app. So those sort of things come in the deployment stage. So we can cover this entire end-to-end workflow. End-to-end workflow helps because then it actually creates, if you're trying to create startups or things like that, because then we have to solve a problem. It's not just like identifying one single area. So that's how we can identify this end-to-end workflow. So data preparation, AI modeling, and then deployment. So deployment also might involve, like if you want to create a C or C++ code. So from MATLAB, we can all generate codes, C or C++ code automatically as well. So you can do that, which can be useful for any hardware as well. Okay. Any questions? Was this do you think this will be useful? I mean, of course, in 1 hour you won't learn, but this is like an overview, just these examples are all there for you. You can find these examples. I can also share these examples. You can see in the details, but this is what we go for the steps, and that is what we want to find out as an objective when we are using deep learning for manufacturing, for defect detection, for fault classification, this sort of an application area. Any questions on this part? Okay, thank you. Yeah, you can think about it. You can think about how you can use this, how it can become relevant, and then you can reach out to us, and then we can discuss on your problem. So this is kind of the overview of how all the steps involved and how do we go about defect detection. Now, I talked about images, but images are not the only thing here. It can be signals as well. So this is how we can do for things. Now, as I mentioned, so there is a difference between machine learning and deep learning. In machine learning, we identify the features, and then once we find out the features, we can classify. Now, this is what it says, like a biomedical applications. We do this for healthcare applications, where if we give, like, say, for example, a heart rate data or something, can it actually find out whether this is an EKG data, EMG, EEG, or what sort of a data? If we find out the features and then let the algorithm do it, this is called machine learning. If the neural networks do it, like what we did here, it can be an AlexNet network or mobile net V2 network, version 2 network. So then if we are using those networks, then it is called deep learning, right? Now, yeah, you can if I have to summarize, what needs to be done is, once we have the data, we do these sort of things, pre-processing the data, finding out the model. And once we have the model, we use it for new data. So the previous steps also remain, but once we have the model, then we use this top model, which we have used for training for prediction purposes. So we train till we get the best model, then we use that model for our new data. That is what the entire concept is all about. Okay. Now I'll quickly show one more example, maybe in 5-10 minutes. The point is, this is not only true for images, right? This can be true for any form of applications. Any form of applications, in the sense it can be signal data as well. Signal data means it can be, so this example here, which can just quickly show, is an air compressor. Air compressor, and we want to identify the faults using such form of a network here. So this air compressor, if I just open up this example, we'll just see how it looks like. Um, so again, the live script, data preparation, so this is the data set we have. So we have an air compressor, and from there we are getting this data from different sorts of vibration, right? So it's bearing, flywheel, healthy, all sorts of errors as well. The next thing what we do is, after we get the data, again we use this concept of split level. The same thing what we did last time. So the concept is, it's not like only for images, it's also for signals. We are splitting the data for training and validation and testing. So once we do that splitting, then we have those subfolders internally by which we are just separating them. And once we do that, this is how the data looks like. If you want to just look into the data, this is how the data looks like. So it's not only images, this is like a vibration data. So you can plot the data. This is how the data looks like. And then this, you can just use the sound also to play the compressor data. Now this is a time series data, right? So if you have a time series data, then the features becomes like mean, standard deviation. It can be spectral domain. You can go for a signal, for a spectral domain, a frequency domain, and find out what are the relevant frequency involved, right? So that is another thing what you can do, going to the spectral domain to find out the features. So but the data can be like, now it's a time series data, something which is varying with time. um, so once we have that data, if I have to use the deep network approach, the neural network approach, the network approach, AlexNet won't work for this, right? AlexNet is for only images. MobileNet V2 is only for images. But what we need to know is, when we are going for signals, we have to use a different sort of a neural network. The neural network that we use when we deal with signals, it's called LSTM, long short-term memory network. When we deal with images, it is called CNNs, convolution neural network. It's just that the network is different. It takes, like, maybe if you think about a learning curve, how long does it take to learn? You can, once we know the domain, you can, I mean, it takes a month to understand which network will work best. So if you go for images, you might think that this is okay, neural network will work, convolution neural network will work. But once I go for signals, I have to go for an LSTM network, which is called a long short-term memory. The basics fundamental concept is very simple. It is just like when you have signals, signals are varying with time, right? So time series signals has a memory. So that's why we need a network which will have a memory of its own. And that is basically what is called a long short-term memory. So if I have to find out features, we can just use this command called audio feature extractor. Audio feature extractor is an inbuilt MATLAB command by which it will find out features from time series data. So this you can do via apps as well. There is another app here. It's called a diagnostic feature explorer app. So using this app, what it does is, if I load any data to this app, any time series data, you can find out the features, the time domain features, as well as the spectral domain. So you can just select all the features and it will give you all the features. So you can do via the app as well. In coding platform, it is called, in the coding environment, this is called audio feature extractor, or we can use via the diagnostic feature explorer app. Now the point is, this task can be done via the app, but not the entire workflow. So once we find out these features, we can normalize them. So here what we are doing is, we are just normalizing by mean and standard deviation. This you can do to improve accuracy. To start up, you can, maybe it's okay if you do not do them as well. So once we have that, I'll just show the modeling part. In the modeling part, once we have the network, how it looks like is, this is how we create our network, right? So these are the layers. So in the previous example, what we did is we used a already created network, right? AlexNet or MobileNet v2, but you can create your own network from scratch. So here what we are doing is we are creating our own network. This network contains these 7 layers. uh, as I mentioned, this contains LSTM layers. This is an LSTM network, so that's why this does not contain any convolution layer, but what it contains is something called an LSTM layer. So if you have to go for this, you can understand these concepts also from multiple courses, the theories as well. But this is how we implement this, and it's also good to learn and implement it, because then you have a better understanding. So here we find out these layers equal to this. I can just show you these layers. If I just write here layers equals to this. um, Oh, I haven't run the entire thing, so that's why it is not giving the features and stuff. But maybe say, for example, let me just show you just how do you create this layer. So if I just clear everything, um, so in that case, this entire area will be cleared. So as long as it says busy, that means it's doing something, it's taking some time. Okay, so once we have that, I maybe for the sequence input layer, I have not learned giving entire thing, so I'm just giving some random input to it because we are not running the entire thing. So if I just say this, right, so we create these layers. Now if I go to this network designer, and you can do this via the network designer as well, we can use this layers. So if I go for deep network designer, and then we can see how this network looks like. So this time we are just starting a network from scratch. We are not using any previously trained network like AlexNet or those networks. Those are previously created networks. Here we are starting from scratch. So we have a little bit of flexibility as well. How does this network looks like? Again, if I go to this deep network designer from workspace, I can import this layers. So once I go for import, it will automatically choose layers, and then I click OK. So it is just network is taking this thing up here. Now, if you look here, this contains the sequence input layer. So a sequence input layer, it contains this input size. LSTM contains 7 layers and 6 connections. So say, for example, this is the LSTM which contains, these are some of the properties of such layers. So what I can do is if I can delete this, and I can get one of this LSTM layer from here as well. And then I can connect this, I can just connect this like this. So you can create your own network like this as well. If I go here, if I want 100 layers, 100 units, I put on 100 here. So like this, we can create our networks in these apps, and then we can export this. We can export this to as in the workspace as a code or things like that. Okay, so that's how we can create our networks. Okay, so this is how we can deal with signals. Okay, so in the signals, we create our networks, which is using LSTM layers, right? LSTM networks. For images, we use something called CNN networks, but the concept remains the same. Once we have the layers, we can, I mean, these things are more details which I'm not going to the detail, but these are ways where how we can improve our accuracy of the model. Once we do that, we train the network, and then we find out how it looks. And then if I give them random vibration, like I can use my phone to record an the pump by RPM, and then I can give this to this network, and it will tell me whether the pump is healthy or faulty or which fault it is. So this is the background effect. So how, if you want to create these things, we have to go through these steps. We have to deal with the first, take the data, we have to create a network, or we have to find out the features. If you go for machine learning or deep learning, depends. But if I go for deep learning, then for images, we go for some particular type of network. For signal data, we go for LSTM sort of networks, and then we improve the accuracy, get to the best accuracy possible, and then we test it on our new data, right? So this is how we can deal with all these sort of things. Okay. So this is just another example of air compressor classification. And these things finds application in this domain of predictive. All these things goes into something called predictive maintenance, where what happens in predictive maintenance is basically if I have to predict failures, right? So that means if I know the failure sort of data, I can do simulations because it does not mean, so if we have to create this sort of a model, you know, it's not always possible that I have to uh, do faults in the physical system and then only we can find out faulty data. Because say for example, if I have to do this wind turbine problem, right, the wind turbine is faulty now. So if I have to predict when this wind turbine will fault, so does that mean we need that does mean that we need data of healthy wind turbine and faulty wind turbine. So only then when we give a random data, it will find out whether it is healthy or faulty. So then the question becomes, how do you find out faulty data? Do I actually inject faults inside the machine? And so then we are basically ruining the machine, right? So that is not always a good thing to do. We cannot ruin like hundreds of machine to generate faulty data. So in that case, what we can do is we can do simulations to generate faulty data. In simulations, we can just maybe turn some knobs, put some leakages, put some vibrations, and then we generate data for faulty conditions. So what we do in Simulink or in Simscape rather, is we can generate this data for different faulty conditions. And once we generate this conditions, we club the failures plus the data we are measuring from our sensors, right? So measured data and failures, both of them we give the model, and then we can find out whether it can actually classify whether it is healthy or faulty, right? So that is how that's as a typical case where we can create faulty data from our simulations, club that with our data that is real time coming from the so say for example, I have this fan rotating. So from the simulation, I find out for the RPM of the fan, what is the normal RPM, what is a faulty RPM with time, right, from the simulation. And now if I have a sensor in my fan now, it will go to the model and real time it will see whether, based on the data, whether it is healthy or faulty, because the fault is already there for training based on the simulations. And this is what typically the predictive maintenance concept is, because then it can tell me that there is something wrong in the RPM and it needs maintenance. There is something wrong in the way the nuts are manufactured and it needs maintenance. So this is that entire field, right? So you using deep learning, machine learning for doing predictive maintenance. And then finally, what we can do is we can create something of this app. Now, what it is, it's like a Google Translator where if I give some random languages, it cannot find out. It does not know. We do not know, but Google translates it for us. Can we give a random signal to that translator, and then it tells me in English that there is some problem, I need help. Also, better if it can specifically tell what is the problem, and then how long the problem will, make it worse. Like how will when the pipeline completely stop. So that is what it can do, because the fault from based on the faulty data, we have the simulations, and then we have created this deep learning model or the machine learning model. Based on that, now we can create this app. So in MATLAB, we have something called MATLAB App Designer, using which you can create these apps. And this does not need, Java coding or things. It's like a drag and drop. You can go for Google MATLAB App Designer, and you can find out details about that. So you can create these apps by which I mean, this is dependent on the MATLAB coding. So we basically use the MATLAB code and put it in App Designer. And then it will create this app. Then we can use these sort of things as well. And these are there. So these are again our customers. So it has been, so this one is a Mondi packaging industry, which are using healthcare, BMWs, Tata Steel. So all of them are using these sort of things because to make them their industry workflow autonomous, smart, and that is how they're doing. And that needs this final piece of the puzzle of deployment. So whatever we create in the coding environment, we deploy it directly onto the hardware. So we have tie-ups with companies like Intel's and Nvidia's, by which whatever we do the algorithm, it's not just for simulations. It's as accurate that we can put inside a healthcare or an car, so that it becomes readily commercialized code which is there inside the car itself. So if you have a chip which goes inside the car, we do the algorithm in MATLAB, and we directly does the converts the code into the NVIDIA chip which goes inside the car, and that is how it goes deployed inside the hardware as well. Okay, so the other thing is which sort of hardware. So in general, there are CPUs and GPUs. CPUs from Intel's ARM processors, or for GPUs for NVIDIA boards. So we have tie-ups with these companies by which we can directly target this hardware, either Intel, NVIDIA, or it can be simple like Arduino. Raspberry Pi. So whatever we do, we can deploy it on site an Arduino or Raspberry Pi as well, or simply an Android phone. You can create an app for an Android phone or iOS phone as well. Similarly, this one is like whatever, like the AlexNet, what we did for identifying of the peacock image, this we can put inside our Android phone, and then if you give your Android phone, you can just point it to our face and it will do that thing as well. Similarly, we can put it into Raspberry Pis and all this sort of hardware. So this is in summary what we are doing. This all these 4 steps. Data preparation. Data preparation might contains like other statistics as well. So if you have to, find out outliers, so those things are pretty easy to do. Then finding out the AI model, system design, because then we are integrating with the entire system, and then deployment for the hardware part. Okay, now just for the last 2 minutes, how do you start? There are multiple courses. These are free courses. You can just get started. What you need to do is just use your email ID to create a MathWorks ID, and all these courses are free. And now there are 2 more additions: control system and image processing. So anything that has an on ramp at the end, these are all free courses, free for everybody. These are all 2-hour courses. It does not need any prerequisite. So you can do MATLAB on ramp. That is a basic prerequisite, because then you understand the platform, and then you can go for machine learning on ramp or deep learning on ramp, because this will start from scratch. Within 2 hours, it will like kind of ramp you up on that platform. These are self-paced. These runs on the browser, just on online. This is not like just a video. This gives you tutorials, and this is a hands-on course. It will give you assignments, and once you do those assignments, it will progress. If you do them wrong, then it will give you hints to make it better. And at the end of like finishing the course, you will get certificates. So these are all on-ramp courses which are free for everybody. So feel free to do this, and then you will get a certificate, and then you get equipped with these things. There are bigger courses. So this machine learning with MATLAB and deep learning with MATLAB, these are 14-15-hour courses. These can be used for semesters as well. So in terms of access, these are not free, but multiple institutes in India and worldwide now have something called campus-wide suite, which means all education institutes, like all the ITs and NITs, they have these now, which means like MATLAB for everybody. And then this can also be done, like whatever I was doing in the local MATLAB, we can do inside the browser as well. So MATLAB also exists in the browser. So if I just say MATLAB, in the browser, if I say MATLAB online, and then Simulink also, this works in the browser. So if you have limitation in terms of local computer not being very fast and things, so we can do here. So everybody has 5 GB, and this uses Amazon Web Service. So we have types with Amazon to do that part of things. So you can do all sort of simulations in this browser as well. Okay. So that is also one interesting things. So the institutes that have that campus-wide suite, they have this access, but otherwise these are paid services, and you can reach out to us. I can connect you with the right person if you need more information on how to access. So these courses are all also self-paced, give certificates online and things like that. There is a big introducing deep learning with MATLAB. This is the ebook which you can download and go for this. And all these contains links, and you can just Google and find out more. There are Coursera courses, there are teaching courses which you can go through. All these things are useful, and I mean, at any point, of course, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out, and then we can connect you with the right person. I can also address the technical queries as well. This QR code actually contains another 5 talks, overviews on predictive maintenance. Feel free to go through them. They are there inside. Like if you Google predictive maintenance MathWorks, this will also come up. But you can also go for this link and find out. This is like a 5 or 6 talks, each 10-15 minutes, talking about predictive maintenance. And feel free to reach out to in this email ID or connect. We'd be happy to address anything as well later on. Thank you so much. That's about it. I mean, we can open it up if there are any question answers. I will also put a feedback link that will be just a standard feedback link that we have. So it will be good to have your feedback as well. I just posted in the chat window, so please fill up the feedback form as well. Okay, thank you so much. That's about it from my end. Any questions, I'd be happy to address. Thanks.
So is there any question from the participant side? So I think, sir, there is Dr. Suman ji. Yes, ma'am. Please unmute yourself and you can raise your question. Dr. Lakwinder Singh has said, thanks, sir. Session was excellent.
Sure. Thank you so much. Hope it was useful.
So thank you very much, sir. Thank you for joining us. Although your session was too busy in this week, but you have accepted our request and addressed
Sure.
this
Thank
session.
you.
We are very thankful to you. Thanks from the organizing team also.
Thank you. Thanks. Thanks for
Thank you.
having us.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Bye bye. Have a good
Okay.
day.
Bye-bye. So thank you, participant. All please join tomorrow as per the schedule. Thank you very much for joining us.